For more, we can cross to Alan Kennedy Asser, a research associate at the School of Geographical Sciences at the University of Bristol. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24. Now, we know that there is a link to human activities and climate change, but why are we seeing such extreme heat over such a wide region at this particular moment in time?
Thanks for having me on. It's a whole host of different reasons will be leading to these high temperatures across the whole of the northern hemisphere at the moment, as we've been talking about, particularly in Europe, and you've been talking about on the program. You've got this huge mass of warm air rising up from Africa over southern Europe, and that's being dragged up by the jet stream. Where we are over in the United Kingdom at the moment, we're on the other side of that jet stream, so actually it's quite cool at the moment relative to what we might expect or we had even last month, say, in the UK. But what's been sort of interesting in recent years is, in the past, the jet stream would always meander north and south as it came, say, across the Atlantic into Europe, but it seems to be getting increasingly more stuck in certain positions. So we'll get these settled periods of, warm air moving up from the south over Europe, or as is the case here at the moment in the UK, quite unsettled weather sitting for several weeks in a row, and that just follows on from in June. We had the opposite thing happening in the UK. We had a very warm and very dry June, again because of the position of the jet stream. So there's a whole load of different factors affecting the weather in given locations, and that's just added on top of the likes of global warming and the effect of the El Nino southern oscillation, which we expect to see kicking in sort of later this year and into next year as well.
Well, we've been talking about some really unthinkable numbers when it comes to temperatures, such as 48 degrees in parts of Italy. But you recently wrote an article about the role of humidity. Why is humidity such an important factor to consider when we look at these soaring temperatures?
Sure. So obviously, the main thing we would think of when we talk about heat and heat stress would be the effect of temperature. But actually, an important element of heat stress is, as you say, humidity. And the reason for that is our bodies, the main way we cool ourselves is we sweat, which means the water is on the surface of our skin and that evaporates. And as the sweat evaporates, it cools down our bodies. If you've got higher humidity in the air around you, sweating will be less efficient. It'll happen more slowly. And as a result, it's harder for our bodies to cool down during periods of high heat.
Well, we talk about how dangerous this extreme heat can be, especially for the elderly, the vulnerable. But there comes a point when even a healthy person can't cope with the heat. Where is that threshold, and are we seeing those conditions right now in much of the Northern Hemisphere?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One that I've thought about a lot with my collaborators and my colleagues. Is there certain thresholds of heat stress above which it is just too hard for humans to work or to live and so on? In reality, it's very, very hard to pull out one specific threshold. So lots of people will be vulnerable for different reasons, and the people who actually will suffer most in heat waves, or might even get heat exhaustion or heat stroke, a lot of that will be very circumstantial. So if someone is unable to rest, or they get dehydrated, or they have no access to shade, all of these factors might put them at risk. And it might just be on a given day, I don't know, they're at a concert in an open air park, and all of those conditions are right. Whereas otherwise, if they were sat at home and they were able to rest and rehydrate plenty, they would be perfectly safe. So there's no sort of one size fits all answer as to when these thresholds will be crossed. But certainly anyone in the population can be vulnerable, even the fit and the young and the healthy. It is certainly possible that people, even in the UK, there's examples of young men who would die of heat stress, say on military training exercises.
Certainly really have to be careful out there, especially when these temperatures start soaring like they are. Alan Kennedy Asser, a research associate at the School of Geographical Sciences at the University of Bristol. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24.